Right now, somewhere in your city, a plant is pushing through the crack in a sidewalk, directly outside a pharmacy. It's broadleaf plantain. You've stepped on it 1,000 times. Kids pull it up and throw it away. City maintenance sprays it with herbicide every spring. And yet, this single species was documented by the Greek physician Dioscorides over 2,000 years ago as a reliable wound-healing agent. Roman soldiers packed it into their field kits. Native American nations across an entire continent used it independently for the same purpose. A 2013 review in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology confirmed its antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory compounds. Your grandparents knew it. Battlefield medics relied on it. PubMed indexed it. And you've been mowing it. Here's what you need to know. One plant on this list is the direct ancestor of aspirin. Another survived a Nobel Prize discovery 17 centuries after it was first written down. You've been mowing your medicine. Let's start with that plant you just heard about. Broadleaf plantain, the trailside first aid kit. You've seen it everywhere. Low-growing, ribbed oval leaves hugging the ground in sidewalk cracks, gravel driveways, trailheads, playground edges, vacant lots. It smells green and faintly earthy when you crush it. The leaves are smooth on top with a slightly rubbery texture, threaded with tough veins that run lengthwise like cables. In traditional medicine, this plant has been a first response wound treatment across cultures that never communicated with each other. European herbalists called it way bread and packed it onto cuts. Cherokee and Ojibwe nations used it for insect stings and skin irritation. Chinese traditional medicine documented it under the name Che Qian Kao for urinary and inflammatory support. The convergence is hard to ignore. When multiple unconnected systems land on the same plant for the same purpose, something real is happening. And modern science agrees. The key compound is aucubin, an iridoid glycoside that studies have shown accelerates wound healing markers and demonstrates antimicrobial activity. One research review noted its significant potential in wound management. People still use it the old way: chew a fresh leaf into a poultice and press it onto a bee sting, a scrape, a bug bite. It draws, it soothes, it calms inflamed skin. And the reason you've never heard of it? It can't be patented. It grows everywhere. There's no money in a free medicine that regenerates itself every spring. Think of it this way. There's an emergency room growing in your driveway. You've just been pulling it out by the roots. Now consider what else you've been destroying. Dandelion, the bitter pharmacy. Every suburban lawn in North America wages chemical war against this plant, and every traditional medical system on Earth valued it. European herbalists prescribed dandelion root as a liver tonic and digestive bitter for centuries. Traditional Chinese medicine uses it under the name Pu Gong Ying for heat clearing and detoxification support. Middle Eastern and Ayurvedic traditions documented similar applications. The French didn't just use it, they named it honestly. Pissenlit means wet the bed, a direct reference to its powerful diuretic action. Modern research has validated the mechanism. Sesquiterpene lactones in the root stimulate bile production. Studies have explored its hepatoprotective effects, and its leaves are confirmed to be nutrient-dense, rich in vitamins A, C, and K, plus potassium and iron. A 2016 review in the journal Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine described dandelion as having promising pharmacological activities. The entire plant is usable. Root tea for sluggish digestion, young leaves in salad for mineral intake. The flowers have even been studied for antioxidant content. And what does modern lawn culture do with this documented, nutrient-dense, pharmacologically active plant? It classifies it as an invasive weed and sprays it with glyphosate. Your lawn's most nutritious resident, and you're paying money to poison it. That contrast between what's valued and what's dismissed is the thread running through this entire list. And we're just getting started. Here's one most people have never even heard of: cleavers, the lymph mover. Its botanical name is Gallium apirin, and if you've ever walked through a hedgerow and felt sticky little stems clinging to your clothes, you've met it. It's a scrambling, clingy plant with whorled leaves and tiny hook-like hairs that grab onto anything: fabric, fur, skin. It grows in moist, shady edges, garden borders, fence lines, ditch banks. European folk herbalists used cleavers as a spring lymphatic tonic for centuries. The tradition was simple. As the body emerges from winter sluggishness, cleavers was taken as a cold infusion to gently support the lymphatic system, the body's internal drainage network. The plant contains chlorogenic acid and other compounds associated with mild anti-inflammatory and diuretic activity. Modern clinical research on cleavers specifically is still limited, and that's worth being honest about. Its reputation rests more on centuries of documented traditional use than on randomized controlled trials. But the traditional record is extensive, appearing in multiple European herbals from Gerard to Culpeper and beyond. People make cold infusions by steeping the fresh plant in water overnight. The taste is mild, slightly green, unremarkable. And that's part of why cleavers got forgotten. It doesn't have one dramatic, singular effect. It's gentle, systemic, a slow background support. In a culture that wants fast, targeted results, a plant that works like a maintenance crew for your internal plumbing never stood a chance at getting famous. But it's still there, clinging to fence posts, waiting. And while cleavers hides in hedgerows, chickweed hides in plain sight. Stellaria media, the skin soother, is one of the most common ground cover plants in temperate regions worldwide. Small, bright green, with delicate oval leaves and tiny white star-shaped flowers. It blankets garden beds, creeps along pathways, and fills disturbed soil with soft, almost succulent mats. The texture is tender and juicy. Crush it between your fingers and it releases a fresh, grassy moisture. European herbalism has used chickweed topically for centuries, primarily for itchy, irritated, or inflamed skin. It was a go-to poultice plant for conditions ranging from minor rashes to eczema discomfort, and traditional use records are extensive across British, German, and Scandinavian herbal traditions. The plant contains saponins with documented anti-inflammatory properties, and its cooling, demulcent nature made it ideal for topical application as a poultice or infused oil. Research hasn't placed chickweed at the center of clinical trials the way some other plants on this list have achieved. Its evidence base is primarily ethnobotanical and phytochemical rather than clinical. But the traditional consensus is remarkably consistent. This is a skin plant. People mash it fresh onto irritated patches. They infuse it in olive oil for a soothing balm. The practical application is straightforward and low risk. Why was it forgotten? Oh, because it's too common, too mild-seeming, too quiet. It doesn't make dramatic promises. It just sits in your garden bed, doing what it's done for hundreds of years, waiting for someone to notice. Now, here's where the pattern starts to crystallize. Red clover, the blood cleanser. Trifolium pratense grows in meadows, roadsides, and pastures across Europe and North America. You know it by its round, pink-purple flower heads and its 3-part leaves. It smells sweet when blooming, faintly honey-like, and the flower heads have a soft, papery texture when dried. In European and Native American traditional systems, red clover was classified as an alterative, an old term for plants believed to gradually restore proper function to the body over time. It was used in blood cleansing formulas, skin support preparations, eye and respiratory remedies. The eclectic physicians of 19th century America included it in their pharmacopoeia. Modern research has focused on red clover's isoflavones, plant-based compounds with estrogen-like activity. Clinical trials have examined its potential for supporting menopausal symptoms, particularly hot flashes, with some studies showing modest benefit. But here's the honest picture. The evidence is mixed. Some trials report meaningful improvement. Others show results that don't clearly separate from placebo. Red clover's traditional reputation outpaces its clinical certainty, and that's okay to acknowledge. Not every ancestral plant has a stack of gold standard trials behind it yet. What killed red clover's reputation most wasn't failed research, though. It was perception. People started seeing it as livestock feed, or pasture filler, a farm plant, not medicine. And that dismissal erased centuries of documented human use. Here's the context that matters for everything you've heard so far. These first 5 plants grow within walking distance of most people reading this. Traditional systems, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, European herbalism, Native American practice, cataloged them centuries ago, independently, often for overlapping purposes. Modern pharmacy didn't disprove them. It simply moved on to patentable molecules. The knowledge didn't vanish because it was wrong. It vanished because it was free. Now we're moving into the plants that'll make you stop and rethink what powerful means. Yarrow, the battlefield bandage. Its scientific name alone tells you the story. Achillea millefolium, named after the Greek hero Achilles, who legend says used it to treat his soldiers' wounds during the Trojan War. That's not just a name, it's a reputation earned across millennia. Yarrow has feathery, finely divided leaves that look almost fern-like and flat-topped clusters of tiny white or pale pink flowers. Crush the leaves and you'll get a sharp, aromatic, almost camphor-like smell. The texture is slightly rough and dry. It grows along roadsides, in meadows, at trail edges, and in open fields. Anywhere the soil gets sun and occasional disturbance. But the history goes beyond Greek mythology. Civil War soldiers carried yarrow. Native American nations across the continent used it for wound care and fever management. European field herbalists packed it into bleeding cuts. The consistent traditional use across cultures and centuries points to one application above all others: hemostasis, stopping bleeding. Modern research has identified the compound achyline, which has been shown to influence clotting factors in laboratory studies. Additionally, yarrow contains anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial compounds, including chamazoline and flavonoids. One ethnobotanical review described it as one of the most widely used medicinal plants in the world. People still apply crushed yarrow leaves to minor cuts and scrapes in wilderness first aid. It's been carried in trail kits and survival packs for the same reason soldiers carried it 2,000 years ago, because it works when you need it. Named after a Greek hero, and every century since has confirmed it earned the title. That's not folklore. That's a plant with a resume. If yarrow is the battlefield bandage, mullein is the lung cleaner. Verbascum thapsus is impossible to miss once you know what to look for. In its first year, it forms a rosette of large, thick, velvety leaves, soft as felt, pale green, almost silver in certain light. Touch them and they feel like lamb's ears. In its second year, it sends up a tall flower spike that can reach 5 or 6 feet, topped with small yellow flowers. It grows in disturbed soil, roadsides, gravel banks, and vacant lots. Anywhere the ground has been broken and left alone. The smell is mild, slightly sweet, herbaceous. European herbalism has used mullein for respiratory support for centuries. Appalachian folk tradition relied on mullein leaf tea for persistent coughs and chest congestion. The traditional preparation was simple: dried leaf tea, sometimes with a filter to strain out the tiny hairs. The plant contains saponins, which help loosen mucus, and mucilage, which coats and soothes irritated respiratory tissue. Together, they create a dual action, loosening what's stuck while calming what's inflamed. Traditional use records are extensive, spanning British herbals, German folk medicine, and American eclectic pharmacopoeia. Modern research has been more cautious but supportive. A review in the journal Pharmaceutical Biology noted mullein's documented ethnopharmacological uses and confirmed the presence of bioactive compounds consistent with respiratory support. Is it a cure for lung disease? No. But for a stubborn seasonal cough or dry, irritated airways after a cold, people have been reaching for this roadside plant for hundreds of years. Think of mullein like a chimney sweep for your airways, clearing out what shouldn't be there so the system works better. And it's growing in the lot behind your office. This next one is where traditional wisdom and modern clinical trials converge dramatically. Elderberry, the immune arsenal. Sambucus nigra has been used in European folk medicine for so long that Hippocrates himself reportedly called the elder tree his medicine chest. The berries are small, dark purple-black, growing in heavy drooping clusters. The flowers are creamy white, flat-topped, and fragrant, almost floral sweet. The bark smells sharp and unpleasant by contrast. Across European traditions, elderberry preparations were the standard household response to colds, fevers, and respiratory infections for centuries. But here's where it gets serious. Modern clinical trials have tested elderberry with rigor. A 2016 study by Tirolongo and colleagues published in Nutrients found that elderberry supplementation significantly reduced the duration and severity of cold symptoms in air travelers. Other trials have shown similar patterns of immune support during upper respiratory infections. The active compounds include anthocyanins, the same class of antioxidants that give the berries their deep color, along with flavonoids and phenolic acids. These compounds have demonstrated antiviral and immunomodulatory activity in laboratory settings. Now, the qualifications matter. Elderberry is promising, but it's not a cure. It's a supportive tool with genuine research behind it, not a replacement for medical care during serious illness. And there's a critical safety point. Raw elderberries and elder bark contain cyanogenic glycosides. They must be cooked or properly processed before consumption. This isn't a casual trailside snack. Prepared responsibly, elderberry is one of the most research-backed traditional remedies in existence. Its journey from medieval cottage remedy to peer-reviewed journal subject is one of the clearest examples of what happens when modern science takes ancestral knowledge seriously. It usually finds the ancestors were right. If you've been keeping count, you're starting to see how deep this goes. And if this is reshaping how you look at wild spaces, share this with someone who needs to hear it, because we're not even close to done. Nettle, the mineral bomb. Urtica dioica is the plant everyone remembers for the wrong reason. You brushed against it once as a kid and got stung, and that was enough. You classified it as dangerous and never thought about it again. But that sting, caused by tiny hollow hairs that inject formic acid and histamine on contact, is the least interesting thing about this plant. The dark green, deeply serrated leaves grow in dense patches along stream banks, forest edges, and damp, nitrogen-rich soil. The smell is earthy and green when dried, vegetal and iron-like when steeped. The texture of the dried leaf is papery and slightly rough. Here's what matters. Nettle has been a food and medicine plant across virtually all of Europe for millennia. During World War II, when food supplies were strained, the British government encouraged citizens to forage nettles as a nutrient source because the mineral profile is remarkable. Iron, calcium, magnesium, potassium, silica, and vitamins A and C, all confirmed through modern nutritional analysis. Medicinally, nettle has been studied for allergic rhinitis support, with some clinical evidence suggesting it may help modulate histamine response. Ironic for a plant that delivers histamine through its sting. Studies have also explored its potential for joint comfort and prostate health support. One clinical review described nettle as a traditional remedy with emerging scientific credibility. People drink nettle tea as a daily mineral tonic. They add blanched leaves to soups and stews. The sting vanishes completely with heat or drying. The plant that stung you as a child might be one of the most nutrient-dense things growing in your region. Your first impression was pain. The reality is power. Now let's talk about a plant that served on actual battlefields, not metaphorically. Calendula, the wound garden. Calendula officinalis is the bright orange-gold marigold you've seen in garden borders and window boxes. The petals are vivid, almost unnaturally saturated. They feel slightly resinous and sticky between your fingers. The scent is mildly pungent, earthy, herbaceous, nothing like the cheerful appearance would suggest, and its history is anything but decorative. During the American Civil War, field surgeons used calendula poultices directly on open wounds to prevent infection and support healing. Ayurvedic medicine documented it for skin repair. European herbalism placed it at the center of wound care practice for centuries. The convergence across traditions is consistent and specific. Calendula is a skin plant. Modern research has confirmed why. The flowers are rich in triterpenoids, particularly faradiol, which have demonstrated significant anti-inflammatory and wound-healing activity in studies. A systematic review in the journal Wound Repair and Regeneration noted evidence supporting calendula's role in promoting tissue regeneration. People use it as an infused oil or salve. The traditional preparation involves steeping dried petals in a carrier oil for weeks, then straining. The result is a golden, mildly fragrant topical preparation that traditional users apply to minor burns, scrapes, dry or cracked skin, and post-surgical healing support. It's the kind of plant that bridges the garden and the medicine cabinet so naturally that the division between them stops making sense. The stuff you planted because it looked pretty in your flower bed has been quietly carrying one of the oldest wound care reputations in botanical history. Like having a first aid station disguised as decoration. Keep going because the next few are where common knowledge meets uncommon power. Chamomile, the gentle powerhouse. Matricaria chamomilla is probably the most familiar plant on this list. You've seen it in tea boxes at every grocery store. Small, daisy-like flowers with white petals and a puffy yellow center. The scent is sweet, apple-like, almost impossibly calming. The word chamomile itself comes from the Greek for earth apple. Dried flowers feel light and papery. I like tiny botanical confetti. And most people dismiss it. It's just tea. A mild flavor for bedtime. Nothing serious. That dismissal is a mistake. Chamomile has been documented as medicine by Egyptian physicians, Greek healers, and Roman practitioners. It appears in virtually every European herbal from the medieval period forward. It is one of the most extensively studied plants in the world. The key compound is apigenin, a flavonoid that binds to GABA receptors in the brain, the same receptor system targeted by pharmaceutical anti-anxiety medications. Clinical trials have supported chamomile's role in mild anxiolytic and sleep-promoting effects. A 2016 randomized controlled trial published in Phytomedicine found that long-term chamomile use significantly reduced moderate to severe generalized anxiety symptoms. This isn't speculation. It's peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled data. People drink it as tea. They use it as a topical wash for skin irritation. They inhale the steam for sinus comfort. And the reason it's underestimated isn't that the science is weak. It's that the packaging is too humble. A plant that modulates your GABA receptors is sitting in a paper tea bag on your kitchen shelf. And you think it's just a warm drink before bed. It's not forgotten, it's just wildly underestimated. Here's a subtle one with a history that reads like a novel. Lemon balm, the calm signal. Melissa officinalis grows in garden edges, disturbed soil, and herb beds across temperate regions. The leaves are bright green, slightly crinkled, and when you crush them between your fingers, they release an immediate, clean lemon scent. Sharp, citrusy, unmistakable. The texture is soft and slightly fuzzy. The taste in tea is gentle, lemony, pleasant. But behind that gentle profile is a medicinal history that spans 1,000 years of serious use. The Persian physician Avicenna recommended lemon balm for mood support in the 11th century. Carmelite nuns in 17th century France formulated Carmelite water, a lemon balm-based tonic used for nervous tension and headaches that became one of the most popular herbal preparations in European history. Paracelsus called it the elixir of life. The science has started explaining why. Lemon balm contains rosmarinic acid, a compound that has demonstrated the ability to inhibit the enzyme GABA transaminase, effectively supporting calming GABAergic pathways in the brain. Clinical studies have shown improvements in mood, cognitive function under stress, and sleep quality with lemon balm supplementation. A 2014 study in Nutrients found that a lemon balm extract significantly improved mood and cognitive performance during controlled stress testing. People grow it in their gardens without knowing what it does. They brush past it on their way to the car. It's available, abundant, easy to prepare as tea, and backed by both a millennium of traditional use and an emerging body of modern research. The plant that smells like lemon candy in your herb garden has been calming human nervous systems since before the Crusades. And now, this is where things get genuinely ancient. Horsetail, the bone knitter. Equisetum arvense isn't just old, it's prehistoric. This plant family has been on Earth for over 300 million years. It predates flowering plants, it predates dinosaurs. It's a living fossil. Oh, and it looks the part. Segmented hollow stems with whorled branches that give it the appearance of a tiny primitive tree. It feels rough and almost gritty to the touch, like fine sandpaper. It grows in damp ditches, stream banks, and wet meadows, often in dense colonies. The smell is negligible, faintly earthy, almost mineral. Ancient Roman physicians used horsetail for bone and connective tissue support. European folk herbalism prescribed it for strengthening hair, nails, and skeletal integrity. The reason, confirmed by modern analysis, is silica, specifically a bioavailable form of silicon that the plant concentrates in unusually high amounts. Silicon plays a documented role in collagen synthesis and bone mineralization. INWA's study in the journal BMC Complementary and Alternative Medicine found that horsetail extract positively influenced bone mineral density markers. Another review noted its traditional and emerging scientific role in connective tissue maintenance and bone health support. People take it as dried tea or in supplemental extract form. Traditionally, it was decocted, simmered longer than a typical tea to extract the mineral content. There are safety considerations. Horsetail must be correctly identified, as some related species contain thiaminase, an enzyme that can deplete thiamine. Proper sourcing matters, but when prepared correctly, you're drinking a plant that has survived every extinction event in Earth's history. A species that outlasted the dinosaurs, and it's strengthening your skeleton. If that's not an authority stack, on nothing is. If you're realizing how much has been hiding in plain sight all this time, help this reach the people who need to see it. Because now we're entering the tier where traditional medicine and modern science don't just agree, they tell the exact same story. This is the payoff you've been waiting for since the hook. White willow bark, the original aspirin. Salix alba grows along rivers, streams, and wetlands across Europe and North America. The bark is grayish-brown, furrowed, and when stripped from young branches, it reveals a pale inner layer with a faintly bitter, astringent taste. The leaves are long, narrow, silver-green, and the tree itself is graceful. Drooping branches, riparian elegance. But don't let the beauty distract you from the history. White willow bark has been used for pain and fever for at least 3,500 years. Sumerian clay tablets reference it. Egyptian papyri document it. Hippocrates prescribed it. Chinese traditional medicine used willow independently for similar purposes. This is not a single culture's folklore. This is a global, cross-civilizational consensus sustained across millennia. And here's the direct pharmaceutical lineage. The bark contains salicin. When consumed, salicin is metabolized into salicylic acid. In 1897, a biochemist synthesized a modified version, acetyl salicylic acid, and called it aspirin. The most widely used pain reliever in human history is a patented modification of a compound that willow trees produce naturally. Bayer didn't invent pain relief. They patented what willow bark had been doing for 3,500 years. One of the earliest examples of drug discovery from a natural source, as one pharmaceutical history review described it. People still use willow bark tea and standardized extracts for mild pain and inflammation. It's gentler and slower acting than aspirin, with some evidence suggesting fewer gastrointestinal side effects, though the research is nuanced and ongoing. The real shock isn't the chemistry, it's the timeline. What you buy at the pharmacy counter for $8 has been growing free along every river since before recorded history. The tree didn't change, the label did. Now we're deep in the legendary tier, And this next one comes with a smell you won't forget. Valerian, the sleep commander. Valeriana officinalis produces clusters of small, pale pink or white flowers that look delicate and innocent on top of tall, straight stems. And the leaves are feathered, the growth habit is upright, and it favors moist meadows, forest edges, and garden borders across Europe and Asia. The flowers smell mildly sweet, but the root, the medicinally active part, smells deeply aggressively unpleasant. People describe it as dirty socks, aged cheese, or simply terrible. That smell is part of the signature. Greek and Roman physicians prescribed valerian root for insomnia and nervous restlessness. Galen recommended it. Hildegard of Bingen documented it. During World War I, it was used to treat shell shock and nervous disorders in soldiers returning from the front, a crude early application for what we'd now recognize as trauma-related anxiety. The active compound, valerianic acid, has been shown to modulate GABA receptors in a manner that supports sedation and anxiolysis without the aggressive pharmacological force of synthetic sedatives. Meta-analyses have concluded that valerian shows modest but real improvement in subjective sleep quality. A Cochrane-style review noted that evidence suggests a possible benefit for sleep, though results are not fully consistent across studies. And that's the honest picture. Valerian isn't a knockout pill. It's a nudge toward calm, a gentle redirection of a nervous system stuck in overdrive. People take it as a root tea, tincture, or capsule, usually in the hour before bed. The taste matches the smell. But that's the trade. A plant that carried soldiers through the trenches and was prescribed by physicians for 2,000 years offers something worth tolerating a bad smell for. It's not glamorous medicine. It's the real kind. If the last one surprised you, this next one might be the single most dramatic validation of ancestral knowledge in modern medical history. Wormwood, the fever breaker. Specifically, Artemisia annua, sweet wormwood. This plant is slender, aromatic, with finely divided fern-like leaves that release a sharp, bitter, almost camphor-like scent when crushed. The texture is light and feathery. It grows in temperate regions across Asia and has been naturalized in parts of Europe and North America, typically in disturbed soils and sunny waste ground. In 340 AD, a Chinese physician named Ge Hong wrote a text called Emergency Prescriptions Kept Up One's Sleeve. In it, he described a preparation of qinghao, sweet wormwood, soaked in cold water and wrung out, with the juice used to treat intermittent fevers. That text sat in Chinese medical archives for over 16 centuries. Then, in the 1970s, a Chinese pharmaceutical chemist named Tu Yuyu was tasked with finding new antimalarial compounds during a massive research initiative. She turned to traditional Chinese medical texts, found Ge Hong's description, and extracted the active compound from Artemisia annua. She called it artemisinin. That compound became the cornerstone of modern malaria treatment. Artemisinin-based combination therapies have saved millions of lives across Africa and Southeast Asia. In 2015, Tu Yu was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, making it one of the only Nobel Prizes ever given for a discovery that traced directly to a traditional herbal text. A gift from traditional Chinese medicine to the world, she said in her acceptance speech. A Chinese text described the treatment 1,700 years before a Nobel Prize confirmed it. That's not a coincidence, that's a pattern. And it's the same pattern running through every plant on this list. Traditional knowledge, documented for centuries, waiting for modern science to catch up. The contrast between how this next plant is perceived and what it's actually documented to do is one of the sharpest on the list. Echinacea, the immune primer. Echinacea purpurea is a striking perennial with tall stems, spiny central cones, and drooping purple-pink petals. It grows in prairies, meadows, and roadsides across central and eastern North America. The root has a distinctive tingling, slightly numbing sensation on the tongue, a sensory clue to the alkamides that are among its active compounds. Great Plains nations used echinacea for centuries, for infections, pain, snake bites, and immune support. It was one of the most widely used medicinal plants among indigenous peoples of the American Midwest, documented extensively in early ethnobotanical records. And then it got commercialized. In the late 20th century, echinacea became a supplement industry darling, sold in every drugstore, marketed aggressively for cold prevention. The backlash was predictable. When some clinical trials showed mixed or modest results, the cultural narrative flipped from miracle herb to doesn't work. Neither narrative was accurate. Meta-analyses, including a 2007 Lancet Infectious Diseases analysis, found that echinacea preparations were associated with a modest reduction in cold incidence and duration. The alkamides and polysaccharides in the root have demonstrated immunomodulatory effects in laboratory settings. The evidence is real. It's also nuanced. Echinacea isn't a miracle, but it's not nothing either. The honest position is somewhere in between. Its true tragedy isn't the science, it's the cycle. Commercialized beyond what the evidence supported, then debunked beyond what the evidence showed. Overmarketed, then over-dismissed. The actual plant, growing quietly in tall grass prairies, tingling on the tongue, carrying centuries of indigenous use, was never part of that noise. It was just doing what it always did. And now the one that might make you rethink your entire spice rack. Turmeric, the inflammation tamer. Curcuma longa is a tropical rhizome with broad, deep green leaves and a dense, knobby root that stains everything it touches a vivid golden orange. Cut it open and you'll see that pigment immediately. Rich, saturated, almost dye-like. The smell is warm, earthy, peppery, slightly musky. The taste is bitter and aromatic with a lingering warmth. It has been a cornerstone of Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine for over 4,000 years, used for inflammatory conditions, digestive support, wound healing, and pain management. The active compound, curcumin, has been the subject of thousands of peer-reviewed studies, one of the most researched natural compounds in existence. It has demonstrated the ability to inhibit NF-kappa B, a key molecular pathway in the inflammatory cascade. Reviews have documented anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and neuroprotective activity, though much of the strongest evidence comes from laboratory and animal studies. Clinical translation has been complicated by one consistent problem: bioavailability. Curcumin on its own is poorly absorbed, and here's where the ancestral knowledge becomes almost eerie. Traditional Indian cuisine has always paired turmeric with black pepper. The compound piperine in black pepper has been shown to increase curcumin bioavailability by up to 2,000%. That pairing wasn't accidental. It was embedded in centuries of culinary practice, an intuitive pharmacological hack that modern supplement companies now market as a premium feature and charge extra for. Ancient cooks figured out the bioavailability solution that billion-dollar labs are still trying to optimize. The spice you've been shaking onto rice since childhood carries 4 millennia of documented medicinal use and one of the most studied anti-inflammatory compounds on Earth. The pharmacy was in the spice cabinet the whole time. We're in the final stretch now, and these last 2 plants aren't here because they're the rarest or the most exotic. They're here because they prove the deepest point of all, that the most powerful medicine might be the most familiar. Rosemary, the memory keeper. Salmarinus rosmarinus grows in herb gardens, rocky hillsides, on Mediterranean terraces and windowsill pots around the world. It has needle-like leaves that are dark green on top and silvery white underneath. Crush a sprig and the scent hits immediately. Piney, camphor-sharp, resinous, unforgettable. The texture is woody and firm. The taste in cooking is warm and slightly bitter. This is a kitchen herb, a decorative plant, a roast chicken companion. And its connection to memory isn't just Shakespeare. Greek students wore rosemary garlands during examinations, believing it improved recall. In European folk tradition, rosemary was placed on graves and carried at funerals as a symbol of remembrance. Rosemary for remembrance wasn't poetic whimsy, it was an observation about the plant's cognitive effects embedded in ritual. Modern research suggests they were onto something real. Our rosemary contains carnosic acid and 1,8-cineol, compounds that studies have linked to cognitive performance enhancement. A 2012 study in Therapeutic Advances in Psychopharmacology found that even the aroma of rosemary essential oil was associated with improved memory performance and alertness in test subjects. Subsequent research has continued to explore its neuroprotective and cognitive support potential. The convergence is beautiful. Greek students intuited something about cognitive function. Funeral traditions preserved the observation through symbolism, and modern neuroscience found the mechanism, volatile compounds crossing the blood-brain barrier and influencing acetylcholine pathways. Kitchen herb, cultural symbol, cognitive support tool, all the same plant. The ancestors didn't always know the mechanism, but they noticed the effect, and that's how real knowledge works. And now, the last plant on this list, and it's the one that's been in your kitchen since before you could cook. Garlic, the original broad-spectrum, Allium sativum. You know it by the papery white bulb, the sharp, pungent smell that intensifies when the cloves are crushed, the taste that can range from mellow and sweet when roasted to fierce and biting when raw. The texture of a fresh clove is firm, dense, slightly waxy. It's arguably the most widely used culinary plant in human history, and its medicinal resume is staggering. Egyptian records show that garlic was fed to pyramid builders for stamina and resilience. Greek athletes consumed it before Olympic competitions. Roman legions carried it on campaign. Ayurvedic physicians prescribed it. And Chinese traditional medicine documented it independently for immune and cardiovascular support. During World War I, when pharmaceutical antibiotics weren't yet available, garlic was used so widely by Russian military physicians for wound antisepsis that it earned the nickname Russian penicillin. The active compound is a lysine, released when raw garlic is crushed, breaking open cell walls and triggering an enzymatic reaction. Allicin has demonstrated broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity in laboratory studies. Reviews have confirmed garlic's association with cardiovascular support, including modest effects on blood pressure and cholesterol markers. A Cochrane review noted some positive short-term effects on cardiovascular risk factors. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most cross-culturally validated medicinal foods in human existence. And it costs almost nothing. It grows easily. It stores well. It's in every grocery store on the planet. The most powerful plant on this list, the one with the deepest historical roots and the broadest modern research base, was in your kitchen the entire time. You've been cooking with pharmacy and calling it dinner. Think back to where we started. A plant pushing through a sidewalk crack outside a pharmacy. Something you'd step over without a second thought. 20 plants later, that crack looks different. That ditch on your commute looks different. That vacant lot at the end of the block, the meadow edge behind the parking lot, the garden bed you planted for decoration, the spice rack you reach for every evening. They all look different now. Not because anything changed, because you did. You walked past plantain 1,000 times. You mowed dandelion every spring. You yanked up chickweed, flinched from nettle, and ignored yarrow growing at the trail's edge. You drank chamomile without knowing it modulates GABA. You shook turmeric onto rice without knowing its traditional pairing with black pepper was an ancient bioavailability solution. You grew rosemary for cooking without knowing Greek students wore it for memory. Every one of these plants was there before. The knowledge was there before, held by grandmothers, carried by soldiers, documented by physicians, written in herbals that sat on library shelves for centuries. Modern science didn't discover these plants. It confirmed what people already knew. The pharmacy was never missing. Your recognition of it was. This list isn't medical advice. It's a lens shift. It's the difference between seeing a weed and seeing documentation, between seeing a vacant lot and seeing a living archive, between walking past power and walking with it. Next time you see a ditch full of green, broadleaf plantain clinging to the gravel, yarrow standing tall at the edge, dandelion blooming yellow in the sun, you'll know what you're really looking at. The pharmacy was never closed. You just didn't know the language. Now you do.